Jay Harris was another one who came on my podcast. That was an honor for him to come on. Jay Harris, I had the opportunity to interview him, and he's one of the best also on SportsCenter, Jay Harris. So getting to the new thing.
American sports fan. And then obviously the Supreme Court ruling changed things, and then we evolved, and then we launched Daily Wager, and then I was able to do it full time. But I've been doing this kind of role for like 2-3 years now, all in on at ESPN. I know the people that were involved, and I just knew they would succeed. I mean, we had joked a lot about the Zoom mute button, all that kind of nonsense, but I knew we'd deliver. But I was very impressed. Even though I had high expectations, I was still impressed, and it was cool. More youthful, sort of asking questions, or thinks Aaron Rodgers what?
Okay. So someone who joined the chat said beeline to the Cavaliers came out of nowhere.
Yeah, that's a great call. Yeah, no, that's a big one. I guess I leaned to the Celtics because there was a storied franchise picking a coach that had never coached in the NBA before. But, that was definitely a story that was kept under wraps and beeline. I mean, you'd heard grumblings that he wanted to go, or he had been thought about the NBA, but you never heard that connection. You heard Izzo to the Cavs. That was one name you heard in terms of a college coach going to Cleveland. But, I did not see the beeline news coming at all.
And you see how this worked out right now. Now he's gone, and I think I don't know what's going on. Yeah, but
No, we were just talking, like, what if you're in the NBA, what's like the worst, which team is the farthest from a championship? Farthest away, right? When you face picks and maybe like ability to land free agents. So like everyone rips on the Knicks, but like I think the Knicks are given their salary cap and all that good stuff, and they have Mitchell Robinson. They have a head coach in play. I think there's a lot to like if you're a Knicks fan. Now, are they the closest? No. But they're not the farthest either. I would actually like the Spurs worry me just because they don't tank. You know, they don't bottom out like the Knicks have a couple years. Like the Spurs are always like decent and solid, right? So they reload and they're always going to be competitive. So I almost think like teams like the Knicks are closer to an NBA championship than the Spurs just because of the nature of the NBA and having a guy like Aldridge and DeMar DeRozan doesn't really help you win titles. Right. It helps you be relevant, helps you be good, maybe. But like they got Kawhi in the draft, essentially a draft day trade with the Pacers. So it makes you think. I think the Cavs, my point is, it made me think about, I think the Cavs are up there in terms of being one of the farthest teams away.
Yeah, I agree with you there 100%. But all right, let me ask you this question now. Obviously, the Nets, obviously it's too early to tell which coaching will go, whoever will go. But I brought up an outside of box candidate. Let me get your take on this. I said Greg Popovich would be a perfect fit for Brooklyn Nets because of KD and Kyrie. I think he can handle the New York limelight and with the stars there now. And then I think Becky Hammond deserves a chance to be a women's coach in the league. But what do you think of the Greg Popovich outside of the box thing for the Nets? I mean,
obviously he can handle any situation. So, like skill set wise, he can handle the Nets and then basically any other team. He's going to be coaching Team USA, right? So he can handle stars. Obviously, he commands the respect given what he has done. I mean, look, we remember Phil Jackson taking over for the Lakers in 1999, and he won the first 3 years. There was no adjustment period. He literally took a team that did not win and won the next year, clearly. And then Kobe and Shaq said that they respected Phil right away versus like Kurt Rambis and Del Harris and some of the other. Yeah. Now that's on the players. Don't get me wrong. It's not Del Harris's fault. It's not Rambis' fault, but that's just the nature of the situation. So when you have a head coach that commands respect, has rings, can put them on the table in front of you, much like Riley did to LeBron in the recruitment meetings, the music stops. They pay attention right away. And obviously, he would do it. Now, I personally don't think he would. I just don't think that's Pop's nature, but I also don't know Pop. I never met him. I never talked to him. Just from afar, that seems like a little bit of a stretch for him. I agree with you. I do think sort of the writing is on the wall that Becky Hammond, we would assume is going to be right there in place to replace him. I think that's maybe why he extended his career past Duncan retiring, because it made sense that those two would kind of walk off into the sunset in the same year. give Becky Hammon more years as an assistant. And he's talked about how it's bigger than just the game and giving the opportunity. And Becky Hammon coached the Summer League, if I'm not mistaken, the Vegas Summer League teams. So you're right. The positioning is there. I think it's positioning Pop to retire and not necessarily to go to another team. But, the kind of the mediocrity since Duncan retired and going to the finals, maybe he wants another shot and sort of the challenge of KD and particularly Kyrie Irving in New York. Who am I to say that it's not sort of an itch that Pop needs to scratch?
Right. So back to the NFL draft. I'm a big Dallas Cowboy fan, and I didn't expect CeeDee Lamb to fall all the way to 17. But I was so happy when they drafted him, and I think Jerry Jones, he said, forget about the needs right now. Let's get the best player available. And even 51, Trayvon Diggs, Stephon Diggs' brother, he fell to us at 51. So I feel like we got lucky in this draft. And I think Jerry Jones should stay in his yacht forever now. Because
good luck, Sean.
Yeah. No. So what do you think about our Cowboys?
Well, I'm right there with you. I did not expect CeeDee Lamb to fall, especially after the news of Judy's knee injury, potentially lingering issues. I thought that maybe even made Lamb more likely to be the number one receiver, let alone the third, I believe. But I think it was the right pick for Dallas. I think giving the offense all those weapons is a huge thing for them because that'll just free up Cooper. It'll free up everyone, and even Zeke. It'll free up sort of the running back out of the backfield. Now the defense had some issues, but they're my pick to win the division. Now I think the Eagles have far superior coaching. I'm not a McCarthy fan. I don't believe that he's like all of a sudden an analytics guy, even though he had a couple meetings with some analytics guys. I think there's going to be some limitations, but it's probably a lateral move in terms of Garrett to him. I just think the key is the offensive coordinator is maintaining. Yeah. Dak Prescott will be another year. And I just think with all those weapons, including CeeDee Lamb, how can that offense not be explosive? I think the Giants and Redskins will be a little better, but they're still not there. So it comes down to the Eagles versus the Cowboys. Even though Philly has the better coaching, I'm going to go with Dallas to win the division. So I was impressed with the yacht. But, yeah, no, you're right. Jerry Jones from the yacht did a nice job.
Yeah. So a couple of my friends said that they told me that they compare CeeDee Lamb to DeAndre Hopkins. Do you see that in CeeDee Lamb's game?
I mean, you see it, but it's just so hard to make that comparison. I mean, given Hopkins is perceived as one of the best receivers in the NFL, if not the best. Lamb, after the catch, we all saw it, but we have to pump the brakes a little bit. This is still the Big 12, and guys are always running wide open. At times, the Big 12 defense was respectable, but you just wonder about some of the past Big 12 receivers, or namely the Oklahoma guy, Shepard, goes to the Giants, doesn't materialize to what they expected. There's been a lot of receivers in the Big 12 who did not continue the dominance. They were obviously performed at a good level in the NFL, some of the top picks, but that dominance that was expected was not there. So you almost wonder, it's just not fair. They're completely different players. Why would you compare? But you have to kind of wonder if some of the stats, the gaudy stats that were put up, if it was just sort of, you have to have sort of like a filter on some of those numbers, given it was in the Big 12.
Right. So speaking of the Cardinals, I had Hopkins, man, what a get for Cardinals. And I don't know what the Texans were doing with that trade by getting David Johnson only in the draft pick, I think it was. They could have gotten more for Hopkins. But how improved do you think the Arizona Cardinals now are with Hopkins, Kyle Murray, and the offense?
Well, we always want to get caught up in the skill positions because casual sports fans will always be fixated on that because that's what they know. Like we know DeAndre Hopkins, obviously from fantasy and also just watching, but they had some issues at offensive line. Will they shore that up? Maybe. Will they shore up some of the defense? I think the coach, I think he had 1 year in the NFL. I think he's going to be better in year two. Some of the decisions in the first probably 4 games and kicking field goals in some weird situation, 4th and goal on the half-yard line. I think he's just going to be better. So I think obviously Kyler Murray will, just having another year under his belt and starting from week 1, day 1. So yes, they're going to be better. Now, will that translate to a lot more wins? I don't know. The division's still really competitive. The Super Bowl, the defending NFC champs are in there. I think the Niners are dominant. And then will the Seahawks still be good? Yes. Will they be great and make the playoffs? We're going to see about that. Rams, I think, will regress a little bit, but they're still ahead of the Cardinals. So the Cardinals just have a tough situation in their division, but I think everyone's going to be better that needs to be better on that team. And who knows, maybe Hopkins is a difference maker to make, there's an extra wild card this year. So maybe grab that last wild card. Maybe stranger things have happened.
So who was your surprise moves in the draft and the head scratchers?
Well, I think Jordan Love. You start there with the head scratcher because you try as hard as you can to get a franchise quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers, an MVP candidate, and when you have them, you have a window of opportunity, and you're going to have hard losses, right? Blown calls in the playoffs or that collapse that Seattle came back and then ultimately went to the Super Bowl. So you're going to have those years when you have a championship quality team and it just doesn't work out. So you still have to do everything you can to extend that window. And drafting Jordan Love just wasn't right. And yes, they've done well with second round picks, but it's not binary. You can do well in the first and second round. Obviously, it takes more than one guy, but you wasted a first round pick, if you ask me, because you had a guy like Aaron Rodgers, and then you got Jordan Love. So I just don't think it was the right move. That was a head scratcher. The first 10 picks kind of evolved like I thought they would. The Lions, I guess people thought maybe Okudah. It's tough to take a corner that high, but he was great. The Raiders, obviously, I'm a Raiders fan. That was a curveball. But, based on what, right? Based on a couple mock drafts that other people think. The guy did well at Ohio State. Now he's older, but I don't think the Tua pick was a curveball at all. I think we kind of anticipated it. I'm not a Justin Herbert guy. He's going to be very good in the NFL, but I've also been wrong a lot. So he has the measurables, 6'4", 6'5", whatever he is. In person, they like him. He's smart. All that has the all. I just don't think he's an effective decision maker. At least I didn't see it in college. That can obviously change in the NFL. We've seen plenty of players develop.
So speaking of the head scratchers, I think. By the way, I gotta say thank you to your Raiders for passing up CeeDee Lamb. I think I was kind of worried that you guys were going to get CeeDee Lamb, but I didn't expect you guys to get Henry Ruggs, the speedster. I'm not going to break your heart right here, but I'm going to say this. I think I compare him to Darius Hayward-Bay.
He might. The Raiders have a track record of this kind of nonsense. How about this one for you? Caesars opened their lines for who the first wide receiver was going to be off the board. Ruggs was 50-1 was the opening number by Caesars, and then it got moved to 30-1, and then I think it went off around 6-1 or 4-1. So it was just a little bit of a curveball there, but we had heard that. We had heard that those kind of three guys were in the discussion. It was obviously Judy and Lamb, and then right below it was Ruggs, and then below that were some other guys like Justin Jefferson, and some of the others. So look, would I have wanted the Raiders to draft Lamb or Judy? Of course. Particularly Judy. He was my favorite guy. But Ruggs, with the speed and what we see with, obviously, the Tyreek Hill comparisons have been made plenty of times. I'm more worried about other picks the Raiders made. Because remember, a lot of that was the Mack trade, right? It was the Khalil Mack trade. You get a second-round corner, essentially, at first-round pick in the part of the Mack deal, if I'm not mistaken. That more is a concern of mine.
See, my other good loser. So I did my winners and losers also. So my loser is the Bears, because what are the Bears do? They have 10 tight ends on their team. What are they going to do with all these tight ends? And it's crazy. Jimmy Graham, and now don't get me wrong, Cole Kmet is a good tight end. It was a weak tight end class from the start, but. What are they going to do with all of these tight ends on the roster?
Well, that's up to Matt Nagy and company, right? So they will use tight ends. They're obviously going to cut some of them. It made for a funny headline. 10 tight ends was definitely a good headline. I think they got issues at the quarterback position. It starts there, obviously. Bringing in Nick Foles makes a lot of sense. I think Trubisky was a project. You knew that. He only had one full season as a starter at North Carolina. Foles has done it, but is Foles sort of like another Jeff Hostetler, like get hot in one playoff run? More starting experience that Hostetler had, of course. And then he had the injury last year in week 1. I'm not sold on the Bears. I think the Vikings and Packers are going to duke it out for the division. I even think the Lions are more respectable than people realize. They were right there in a lot of games, lost some close games last year. I know I'm not a huge Matthew Stafford fan, but he's definitely like quality. But yeah, I'm not a big believer in the Bears. I think 2 years ago that defense was an anomaly. They lost Vic Fangio to become the Denver head coach. I'm not buying the Bears offense, even with Nick Foles, as an upgrade over Trubisky.
Before I let you go, I have some rapid fire questions for you.
Do it.
over under Garrett Cole 20 wins for the Yankees this year if they have a season.
Well, they're not going to play 162. So I will say if they had played 162, I'd probably go over. Just because of the lineup in case he has a bad outing, gives up like 4 or 5 runs in 6 innings. The offense would bail him out. So I would have gone over.
Oh, but if it's like a short, like obviously if they play 80 to 100 games, obviously like 15 to 16 wins for him the first year.
I mean, it just all depends on how many games. If they play 100 games, I'd probably even take the under, just given they might expand rosters and do doubleheaders, and I just don't know how they're going to squeeze in 100 games.
John Moran or Trey Young or John Moran?
In terms of who I want leading my team?
Yeah.
It's a very good question. Wow. Probably Trey Young. His offense is just that much more unique, right? Like Morant is great, but you can get some other guys here and there to do what he does. You just can't get what Trey Young does.
Do you think Luka Doncic will win MVP in the next 2 years?
2 years. I was already nodding. I was like, yeah, he'll have MVPs on his resume. 2 years is tough. Remember, Kobe only won 1. And that was even borderline because Chris Paul and he were right at it. And I think the Hornets finished with the 2nd seed, Lakers the 1 seed, and that was almost a difference maker for a lot of people who were voting that year. And it was only like a game or 2 apart. I'd say no, because team success is so much a part of the MVP discussion in the NBA. Yes, Westbrook won it when they were like the 5 seed, but he also averaged a triple-double that year. It was historic. And I just think guys like Giannis, even LeBron, next 2 years is going to be in the mix. And then Durant's going to be back, have his own team.
Mm-hmm.
Curry is going to be more of a guy instead of having to share the wealth. Doncic is going to be there, but so much depends on team success. Can Dallas be a top 4 seed? Maybe. But you still got the Rockets in that division with I'm going to take the Fields. I'm going to take the no there for the next 2 years. But when it's all said and done, he'll have. The question is, will he have over 1.5 MVPs on his resume?
Mm-hmm.
That I don't know.
Do you think Kawhi Leonard will win another championship either this year or the next coming, like whatever his contract is with the Clippers?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends how long he stays, right? Anthony Davis, in theory, can become a free agent this summer. Kawhi, I think Kawhi wins another title. Now, I just can't guarantee it's going to be in LA because I just don't know what the shelf life is for that core with Paul George and company, and then if he decides to go elsewhere. I just don't know how he's wired. But I do think he'll win another title in his career.
Where will Cam Newton land?
It's a great question. The odds market, the offshore odds market certainly thinks New England. I would love to see him go to New England. I think it would just be really cool to see McDaniels and Belichick kind of maximize him and all the attributes and the rare qualities he has. I just don't know if they're going to go that route. I kind of anticipated the Andy Dalton route a little more. I'm not buying that he wants to go to war with Stidham and Hoyer. I just think there's someone else out there. So I'll say Cam Newton to the Patriots just because we're kind of winding down here.
Favorite food?
Lobster.
Favorite thing to do outside of your work?
I mean, pretty generic, but hang out with friends.
Favorite sports movie?
Ooh, that's tough because obviously there's classics like Hoosiers and Field of Dreams. I don't count Caddyshack. I would say Major League. Major League?
Oh, interesting one, yeah. Favorite memorable game you've been to?
Ooh, I would just say the Super Bowl that I went to because it's the Super Bowl. It wasn't that epic of a game. It was the rain game when Peyton Manning won his first Super Bowl with the Colts over the Bears and Rex Grossman threw the picks and the offense was so bad. Although you got the opening kickoff return for a touchdown. I'd say it's the Super Bowl in Miami when I went. I think it was 2007, I want to say.
All right. Favorite thing to do in Vegas?
Fight night. There's nothing like a fight night in Vegas. I know it's a cliche, but there's just a buzz that starts in the early afternoon, like 2, 3 p.m. around the Strip, especially if it's around that hotel, like maybe the MGM. And the buzz, and then just the progression of fans, sort of just, and then the attire of the fans, and then the buzz in the arena. There's just something like a fight night in Vegas when you have like a Mayweather fighting or something along those lines. It just sort of resonates. And, you know, you can go to any club and do any of that stuff. But the fight night, the rare fight when you get an actual solid fight night.
Thoughts on this Michael Jordan documentary so far?
Well, it's been great. Obviously, we all had high expectations, right? Because we know what 30 for 30 brand is and what they've done in the past. I've enjoyed it. I'm waiting to have my doors blown off, you know, the socks knocked off. Because I personally knew a lot of this stuff. So I knew about the contract with Pippen. I knew how he took more short term because he needed that lump sum, even though his agents advised against it. I've enjoyed some of the footage that we didn't normally get, like the team, like Jordan and Pippen treating Jerry Krause like a pledge almost. That was eye opening more than anything. I mean, I know people didn't like him, but